This next video is going to show you how to start carving once you have finished drawing your design onto your linoleum. Students can choose to fill solid areas in with their black marker. Keep in mind, any area that is black does not need to be carved in the final linoleum. So if you're looking at your project and you're like, wow, that's all those brown areas is what I have to carve out, you can pick some areas to thicken up and darken because it will be less carving for you later. So keep that in mind. Anything that you make solid black, you don't have to cut. Just be careful that you don't have two black areas touching because then you won't see the design. Okay, so I just filled in some of those areas solid black. Now I'm ready to start carving. In order to start carving, students will need to grab a bench hook. These kind of look like a zigzag shape, and they're designed so that they can clip onto the desk so that you have a place to secure your linoleum so that you don't hurt yourself when you're carving, and so that your linoleum stays in place so it doesn't move. Keep in mind, you should never just be carving right on your desk because it is not going to secure and it will move. So we use the bench hook to help us stay safe and to make sure that we're not hurting ourselves or that it's moving around. Students will then be getting an assigned carver, and these are blades that look like a V shape. They come in different sizes, size 1, 3, and 5. So the way that the blades are designed, they look like a V shape. And keep that V shape in mind when you're carving. The V should be pointing down when you're carving. So when you're ready to start carving your linoleum, students will want to heat their linoleum with an iron just to help warm it up. It makes carving easier. If for some reason you don't have an iron, you can still carve this even when it's not heated. And students are going to be carving all the brown areas down. So keep that riddle or keep that rhyme in place. Anything that's brown gets carved down. So I'm only cutting the brown sections. I am not cutting any black lines. So the black lines need to stay raised or untouched. When I'm ready to start carving, I want to make sure, because your linoleum is longer than your bench hook, there is going to be a section that extends past the edge of the desk. So you want to make sure you're not carving that because that's going to bend or flop. So if you do need to carve a section that's overhanging, you can turn that lots of different directions. You can spin this lots of different ways so that you're always having access to the parts that you need to. Okay, and so when you're ready to start carving, let's just say I'm going to start carving my forehead. I am going to take that carver and I want to make sure that I am always cutting straight, perpendicular to the back of your bench hook. So that way you are never cutting yourself. I never want to be cutting on a diagonal. I never want to be cutting horizontal, and I never want to be cutting towards my own body for safety purposes. My hand should never be in the path of the blade because that's how you'll cut yourself. So my weak hand should always be behind the blade, and as long as I'm cutting straight, I'm in good shape. When I have to cut a curve, I can turn the linoleum on its side and continue cutting straight. So as always, I can keep moving my linoleum, but as long as I'm cutting straight and away from my body, I'm in good shape. I can stop if I need to come to an edge and pluck out the strings of the linoleum. So we are going to be removing all the brown sections. Watch out for those black edges and continue to cut until you have a lot of lowered surfaces and raised surfaces from the black. Some common mistakes. Make sure that you guys are turning frequently. You can change blade sizes. Even if you can't, a size 3 is really good for pretty much everything. Just be a little bit careful around your eyes and small features. And if you accidentally cut a black line, there's no way to get that back until the end of the project when we actually print. You would have to do some touch-ups later for that. So be very careful whenever you're approaching a black line that you are not accidentally cutting that. And you're gonna have to cut a lot of the brown areas down. So make sure that you are spinning and rotating and reheating this frequently if it starts to feel cold. Now, if you cut yourself while you're carving, Common mistake is kids' hands are in the way, they just don't realize. And if all of a sudden I'm starting to bleed, the first step, students should always stop carving and immediately tell their teacher. Once you've told your teacher, and whether or not you're bleeding or not, we want to make sure that we know that you're injured. Students, if applicable, can also wash their hands with soap and water at the sink, and they can hold a paper towel on their cut. Students would then get a Band-Aid and wrap their finger and hopefully learn from their mistakes so that they don't continue doing that. So fast forward, once I am done carving all of the brown areas, here's a few student samples that have finished. So if you look closely at these examples, all the black areas remain raised, all the brown areas are sunken down and lowered. So it's okay if they pop up a little bit, you can still carve those down. Just be careful that you're not carving all the way through the back of the linoleum. So you should never be piercing holes through. That's a sign you're carving too deep. And here's another finished student sample. So at the end of this video tutorial, you have just learned how to safely carve, making sure that you are always carving straight away from your body, and making sure you're turning constantly so that when you have to approach a curve, you can handle that without turning your blade sideways.